This video is brought to you by Southern New Hampshire University. Creating video games is hard, especially without a good teacher. And you can believe me on that, because the best game I could make without any real knowledge was this Catnip Ball adventure. But with today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University, you can take your game making skills from this to this with SNHU degree in game development. Learn the ins and outs of the necessary computer programming languages, such as C# and C++, which are used to make all the games you love. And with the help of faculty who have real-world experience, you'll learn how to create realistic and dynamic gameplay experiences in the ways you want. Make sure to sign up for free information at snhu.edu/arctic to see how much you could make as a game developer, and you could start working towards your dream job as soon as possible. And even if game development isn't your forte, Southern New Hampshire University has dozens of more online programs. So again, go to snhu.edu/arctac, link in the description. We're on the horizon of a Switch 2 being announced, quite literally days away, but we already knew that was going to happen. And if you don't think so, I don't blame you. Nintendo is a little crazy. But no, I want to skip 10 years forward to the Switch 3. What's it gonna look like? What's it gonna smell like? What's it gonna taste like? Well, if I have anything to say about it, probably like nothing. As I've discussed before, I don't believe Nintendo's next console will have a gimmick. Or rather, not a big gimmick. I'm certain we won't have dual screens, or a big controller redesign, or anything too major in that vein. Most likely, it'll be small changes in the way we interact with a console, just like in Arlo's prediction video. I say this because it's quite clear that the next console to be revealed won't really be a massive leap for the player. However, this upgrade will be gigantic in terms of performance. Enough so that I don't think we'll be seeing any form of a Switch 3 for years. Nintendo has had a long and comprehensive history of looking at their fellow console manufacturers and doing absolutely anything but that. If Sega wants to make the Gore Machine 3000, Nintendo makes the Kitty Box 4000. When everyone has lame 2D visuals, we get epic 3DS graphics. And at last, when home consoles or phone gaming is all the rage, Nintendo brings it all together in one 720p 27fps hybrid portable powerhouse. And even if you're the biggest Sony boy or X-lad, you cannot reasonably deny the Switch's success. It made Nintendo the richest company in Japan, and has far outsold the likes of Sony and Microsoft combined. Though it struggles with games, even from Nintendo themselves sometimes, it never actually matters, because people, real people, as in real people who just want to play a little bit of Hogwarts Legacy once in a while, don't really need all that much graphic fidelity in the first place. No matter how bad all those games looked at the partner showcase, ultimately, most won't care. So that raises the question, if I don't believe there's going to be much of a big gimmick with the Switch 2, then what could possibly be supplemented with it to make the console sell better than the Switch already has? All things considered, normal people don't really care about performance. It's not like they'd play the GameCube over a Switch most days, but the leap between Switch and PS5, no matter how big, isn't really worth the extra $200 in games. So, if the Switch 2 only exists to have a boost in hardware and performance, how on earth do I expect it to compete with the Switch in any way? Why would anyone buy this if they already have a perfectly good Switch at home? Well, I don't expect them to buy it. I don't expect this next console to compete with the Switch OG at all, especially if it gets a price cut. At least, not yet. If the Switch 2, Super Switch, Switch U, or whatever they call it, is just a simple boost in performance, no matter how big, it will underperform compared to the Switch. Now, I'm not saying it'll be a flop right out of the gate. For the first few months, it'll do great in numbers, easily outselling the Wii U. However, it'll undoubtedly stagnate, as a major part of the Switch consumer base simply won't care to upgrade right away. As long as they can still play Mario Kart 8 and Fortnite, they won't really care. Just to push this point down a little harder, most people don't buy a new iPhone every few years or upgrade their TV right away as we get a new graphic improvement. If something works, there's no reason to switch to the new thing. And that is something Nintendo is certainly aware of. What do you do to remedy this issue? Unnecessary gimmicks? Yeah, sometimes that works. although gimmicks for gimmick's sake isn't all that beneficial, especially in the case of the Wii U. Then again, any added gimmick to the established hybrid Switch hardware has the potential to seriously deter any pre-existing users. Will it happen? Hard to say, but with a business-first president, it's unlikely they'd make any risky decisions like that. So then we have the next remedy: exclusives. And I mean lots of exclusives. This is an issue that has especially plagued systems like the PS5 and Xbox Series. And if you've paid attention to any of the news relating to the other companies, it paints a massive problem that the Switch 2 ought to avoid. Since the PS5 release in 2020, we've only gotten a few dozen exclusives to the next generation. And for the PS5 releases, it's quite literally only a dozen titles, including games that are released after the PS5, such as God of War Ragnarok and Horizon Forbidden West, since those games were dual released on the PS4. When the Switch released, we got a dual release on the Wii U with Breath of the Wild. But unlike the PS4, the Wii U didn't sell 117 million units. In fact, it sold a tenth of that, so clearly, no one was gonna buy a Wii U to play it. But now, we're on the horizon of a Switch 2, with a pretty massive gap in first-party announcements. Sure, we've just gotten the partner showcase, but the games announced there were going to be released on the Switch nonetheless. The Nintendo games coming soon, however, are by and large dry as hell. For 2024 first parties, we have Mario vs. Donkey Kong, Splatoon 3 DLC, Princess Peach Showtime, Luigi's Mansion 2, and Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door. And besides Paper Mario and Luigi, Nintendo has revealed just about everything they can about these games on Twitter that would otherwise be shown in a direct. They have been severely holding back from announcing anything new, but that all changes very soon. The lack of Switch announcements, alongside rumors that I don't necessarily believe, but say Nintendo is extending their launch estimation from 24 to 25 to allow more games to be finished, helps show Nintendo's dedication to have as many games prepared for the launch of this next system as possible. And if they're smart, most of these games will only be on the next system. But this brings me all the way back to the year 2035, and the potential launch of the Switch 3. The Switch 2 is going to be a massive leap in performance. Maybe not on paper, but the addition of Nvidia's advanced DLSS upscaling, it'll turn okay hardware into fantastic hardware, making this Switch just about as great as possible for years. Later on in the hardware cycle, we'll get the Switch 2 Pro, with an OLED screen and even better hardware. This update won't be like the Switch OLED, but more so similar to the new 3DS or Game Boy Color, with exclusive games that take advantage of the enhanced hardware. Admit it or not, but gaming as a whole has slowed down a lot in terms of major advancements. Of course, it's never going to stop evolving and requiring more power, but there's a big reason the PS4 is still getting games to this day. Most games don't need 10 teraflops and 1.21 gigawatts of power. And even 10 years down the line, the only real exceptions to this are GTA 6 and game developers who don't know how to optimize their games. That's not even to mention how much it costs for games of that fidelity to be developed, when an equally entertaining experience could be made with just 4K graphics. Then continuing on to the Switch 3, what do? Make it even more powerful? I don't know if that'll work. Technical advancement is already too subtle for most consumers to notice, so when we're 10 years down the line, with 2 upgrades from the already existing Switch, will people even bother with this slightly prettier 120 FPS console? I don't know about you, but I don't see it happening. Even with the most realistic ray tracing advancements that can run at 8K 120 FPS, I don't see your neighbor's sister or your cousin's nephew caring in the slightest bit, because almost realistic is already more realistic than they understand. So there's no Switch 3 then, I guess. Well, probably. Nintendo is just about impossible to predict a year in advance, let alone 10. But by my own understanding of the Nintendo company and technology, it simply won't make any sense to release a Switch 3 if we were to also get a Switch 2 Pro. So what takes its place then? I can't truly say for sure, but that's for the creators at Nintendo to discover. Could it be a VR device? Possibly, but somewhat unlikely due to the monopoly Apple and Facebook is sure to have over the industry by then. So maybe it's still a portable console, but with a wild new gimmick. That's very likely, but it depends what they do with it, and ultimately, it still carries the same problems the Switch 2 would have with a wild new gimmick. Then what is it? What? Oh. Oh my gosh. That's genius, Jerry. Your wisdom once again shined upon us all, and I must leave you all with that. Make sure to floss after eating steak, and as always, keep cool. Bye.